Hello and welcome back to True Story, and thank you for being here with us. What would you do if a complete stranger asked you for just $1? And something about that moment stayed with you longer than it should. What if that small encounter wasn't small at all? Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened that night changed the way I understand dignity, kindness, and the quiet moments we often ignore. My name is Daniel Carter, and most of my life is spent on the road. Highways blur together, exits come and go, and most places disappear from memory the moment I leave them. That night, just outside Oklahoma City, I pulled into a gas station I knew I would forget. Or at least, I thought I would. I was not there for anything important. Just coffee. Just enough to stay awake for the next stretch of road. Inside, the lights were too bright. Everything felt washed out, almost unreal. Shelves filled with identical snacks, the same colors, repeating over and over. It was the kind of place you pass through, not remember. But something about that night felt different. There was one man standing ahead of me at the counter. He wore a faded green military jacket, worn thin with time. A small veteran patch rested on his shoulder, easy to miss if you were not paying attention. But it was not the jacket that caught my attention. It was the way he stood. Straight, careful, controlled, like discipline had stayed. Even after everything else had worn away. Then he reached into his pocket and poured a handful of coins onto the counter. The sound cut through the room. Sharp, quiet, impossible to ignore. He started counting. Slowly, carefully. Then he stopped and counted again. And then, one more time. Something about that moment did not feel right. "I'm $1 short," he said. His voice was calm. No frustration, no embarrassment. Just stillness. And that was when I realized this was not just about money. I did not think about it. By the time the thought even formed, my hand had already moved. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a single dollar, and placed it quietly on the counter beside his coins. "That'll cover it," I said. I kept my voice low, neutral, like the moment did not need attention to exist. I did not look directly at him. I did not ask. I did not explain. I just left it there and let the action speak for itself. For a second, nothing happened. Then he turned toward me, slowly, and the way he looked at me was not what I expected. There was no immediate gratitude, no relief, just something guarded, something careful, like he was trying to understand what this meant. His fingers tightened slightly around the coins still in his hand, the faint metallic sound barely noticeable, but enough to break the silence. And that silence felt heavier than it should have. Even the clerk behind the register stopped moving. The entire space seemed to pause, as if waiting for something neither of us had decided yet. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. It felt possible, like pride and need were standing side by side, neither willing to step back. And then, something shifted, not in the room, in him. The clerk rang up the purchase. The soft beep cut through everything. She handed him the cup. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady, controlled, but something in it did not settle. I nodded once, picked up my coffee, and walked out. I did not look back. I told myself it was nothing, just a small moment, something that would disappear the moment I got back on the road. But it didn't. Because what stayed with me was not what I had done. It was the look in his eyes. Not gratitude. Something else. Something unfinished. And for reasons I could not explain, it felt like that moment was not over yet. A week later, I thought that moment was already over. But I was wrong. Because that afternoon, someone rang my doorbell. Once. Then again. Longer this time. Deliberate. Patient. Something about it didn't feel random. I almost ignored it. It would have been easier. But that second ring pulled me up from my chair. And when I opened the door, I froze. The jacket came first. That same faded green, worn in all the same places. Then the way he stood. Straight. Controlled. But this time, it looked like it took effort. Like holding himself together was no longer automatic. His face was different in daylight. More tired. More real. And in his hand, he held a small envelope. "You probably don't remember me," he said. But I did. Not immediately, but enough. The sound of coins. The light. The silence. "The gas station," I said. He nodded once. That was all he needed to say. I stepped aside. Let him in. And the moment he crossed the threshold, the room changed. The silence felt heavier, more focused. He sat down, slowly, placed the envelope on the table, and for a second his hand stayed on it, like letting go mattered. "The clerk helped me find you," he said. "Remembered your car." No explanation. No apology. Just fact. "It was just $1, I said. And the moment I said it, I knew that wasn't true. He nodded. "I know." The pause that followed was different this time. He looked down at his hands. Careful, controlled, like he had practiced this moment. "That morning," he said quietly, "I had been at the VA office." He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. The weight was already there. "There are days," he continued, "when you don't feel like yourself anymore." I didn't interrupt. "And that day," he paused, just slightly. I realized I didn't even have enough for a cup of coffee. The room seemed to tighten around that sentence. "It wasn't the dollar," he said. "It was how you gave it." And then he pushed the envelope toward me. "I didn't come here to return it," he said. He looked up, and this time there was something different in his eyes. "I came to finish something." And in that moment, I realized this was never about $1. Sometimes, the smallest debt is not about money. It is about how a person sees themselves after the moment has passed. I opened the envelope slowly, because I could already tell this mattered more to him than it ever had to me. Inside was a single dollar bill, folded carefully, precise, intentional, like returning it was only part of what he came to do. "You didn't have to," I said, but before I could finish, he raised his hand slightly, not to stop me, just to make sure I understood. "I know," he said. "Calm. Certain." Then he reached into his jacket and placed something else on the table. A coin. Small, worn, the edges softened by time, as if it had been carried for years. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. "That's from my unit," he said. And just like that, the moment shifted again. "Now we're even." I frowned slightly, not because I disagreed, but because I had never seen it that way. He leaned back, still straight, still controlled, but his voice was quieter now. "If I hadn't come back," he said, "I'd still be the man who couldn't afford his own coffee." The words stayed in the room long after he said them. This was never about the dollar. It was about closing something that should never have been left open. I nodded once. He stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked out, without looking back. The door closed softly behind him, and the silence that followed felt different. Not empty. Complete. The dollar remained on the table. Ordinary. The coin beside it was not. I placed it near the door, not as a reminder of what I had given, but of what he had taken back. Something I had not even realized was missing. Thank you for being here with True Story. And sometimes, the moments we think are over are only waiting for the right time to come back and finish themselves.